Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sanjana and we are talking about the ETFs that I'm looking to purchase for 2022. Also, just want to mention that this video is in sponsorship with Sharesies, but we'll talk about them a little bit later on in the video. Now, if you've been watching me for quite some time, I'm very new to the ETFs and stock world. I've never before invested in ETFs or stocks ever in my life, and I think this will be a great video to do to share some of my research that I've conducted for some ETFs that I want to purchase for this year. I also did a video recently as to why I decided to invest into ETFs and stocks. If you haven't seen that video, I'll leave it on the screen, but also in the description box down below as well. And personally, my reasoning behind why I'm looking into ETFs as opposed to stocks in this video is because there is less risk per se as compared to investing into individual stocks and companies, just because ETFs give me broader exposure to the market, given that it is a little bit more diversified as well. The annual return on ETFs is about 10% depending on the ETF that you buy. Of course, the return is not guaranteed and these prices obviously will fluctuate given the market performance, and past performance is not an indicator of future performance. So if you're new to the investing world and you are excited to join this journey with me, then I definitely have a series coming up on my channel where I talk a little bit more about my stocks and ETF investing for this year. So be sure to give this video a thumbs up if you're excited for that series. Now, also before we jump into the video, I also want to mention that this is non-financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. Please do your own research and make sure your research is in line with your values and it does meet your personal objectives and circumstances. Now, as mentioned, Sharesies is the sponsor for today's video. I'm very excited to be working with them on this video today. I actually have a promo code for you, which will give you $10 if you use my code. I'll leave it on the screen here. It's just Sanjana10, and I'll leave a link to the Sharesies platform down in the description box below, so be sure to check that out. Now, a reason why I went with Sharesies, they are not price competitive. Sharesies allows you to invest with no minimum amount. So that means you can buy Australian, New Zealand, and US shares for just 1 cent. This is something that I like because it breaks down the barriers and allows more people to get onto the personal finance journey and really build a community of empowered people around personal finance. They essentially give someone that's only got $5 the same investing opportunity as someone that's got $5 million. They are accessible on the desktop and also the app as well. I personally use the app. It's very accessible, very easy to use. I love their platform in terms of understanding. If you are new to the ETF world, they do explain everything on their platform and there is no jargon. There's a community of about 500,000 investors across Australia and New Zealand using the Sharesies platform, and there's over 8,000 companies and ETFs to choose from across 3 markets. And that's a few of the reasons why I personally went with Sharesies. So as mentioned, if you are interested in getting $10 by signing up, then be sure to use the code Sanjana10 on the screen. I'll leave a link to their platform down below as well. Now let's talk a little bit about ETFs. So what actually are ETFs? So ETFs are essentially a collection of securities that can be bought and sold in shares on the stock exchange, just like an individual stock. Now, there's an analogy going around which I absolutely love, and the best way to explain an ETF is if you go to the supermarket and you go into the chocolate aisle and you can't decide what chocolate you want to get. Say you want to maybe get Mars, you want to maybe get Cherry Ripe, you want to get Bounty. I'm not sure what, tickles you fancy, but essentially if you can't make up your mind, and because it's such a stressful process, you can essentially go for the favorites box, and that's essentially what ETFs are. They're a collection of an individual chocolate or stock that you can actually purchase, which is a lot cheaper as well, instead of buying individual chocolate. So that's a great analogy if you're trying to understand what an ETF is. I think that's a great way to sort of explain it to yourself. Now, let's move on to the ETFs specifically that I am looking to purchase for 2022. These are just some ETFs that I've had my eye on, and I have invested in a few of them. But again, as mentioned, this is my own research and I highly encourage you guys to do your own as well. So we're going to talk about the ETFs that I'm buying, the top holders in each of these ETFs, why I chose to invest in these ETFs, and their annual returns performance over the years, the management fees, and the sector makeup of these ETFs. Now, if you've reached this far and you are enjoying this video, then please give this video a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to my channel just down below. Now, the first ETF I'm looking at buying is called NDQ. Now, that is the BetaShares NASDAQ 100 ETF. Now, NDQ aims to track the performance of the NASDAQ 100 index. Now, the NASDAQ 100 comprises 100 of the largest non-financial companies listed on the NASDAQ market. Now, the top holders of this ETF include Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Alphabet, Tesla. We've got Meta Platforms, Broadroom, Costco. So as you can see, there is a good mix of companies in there. If we now have a look at the sector allocation, we can see that information technology makes up about 51.6%, followed by communication services and consumer discretionary. This is one of the ETFs that I potentially see a lot of growth in the future years, given that it is very heavily IT based. That's something that I personally look at when selecting my ETF, as to how much tech is involved. So it's definitely something that resonates with me. Now, if we have a look at their performance over the years, you can see, having a look at the year to date, the stock market is definitely at one of its lowest points. But if we actually zoom out and we go to the 3-year, 5-year projection, we can see that overall, the price of this ETF has definitely increased over time. And I think that's something very important to keep in mind. Obviously, the stock market is going to fluctuate, but if you just zoom out a little bit and you look at the bigger picture, essentially there is an upward trend. Having a look at the management cost as well. So the management fee for this ETF is 0.48%. So the management fee that you see is a makeup of the custodian fees, accounting fees, audit fees, and index license fees. So for example, if the management fee is expressed as 0.5% as the annual management cost, so this would actually represent about $50 on a $10,000 investment each year, or $5 on a $1,000 investment each year. So having a look at the BetaShares NASDAQ 100 ETF, we see that the management fee is about 0.48%, meaning $4.80 for every $1,000 that you invest each year. Next, we have ETHI, which is the BetaShares Global Sustainability Leaders ETF. Now, this is an ethical ETF, meaning that the companies that are part of this ETF are not within the mining, alcohol, or gambling industries. And this is definitely something that aligns with my values. And this is something that if you're looking to invest and you want to invest ethically, you can have a look at ethical ETFs. So ETHI includes a portfolio of large global stocks identified as climate leaders that have passed screens to exclude companies with direct or significant exposure to fossil fuels or engage in activities deemed inconsistent with the responsible investment considerations. So the top 10 portfolio holdings of the ETHI ETF is Nvidia Corp, Apple, Home Depot, Visa, MasterCard, Cisco, Toyota, and Adobe. And if we have a look at the sector allocation, again, we can see that information technology plays a huge part in the makeup of the allocation at about 40%, followed by healthcare, financials, and then consumer discretionary. Now, as we can see, the country allocation for these companies is predominantly in the US. And if we have a look at the management cost, it's about 0.59%. So as we can see here, the inception date for the ETHI ETF was in January 2017, and since inception per annum, the returns have been about 19.82%. Now, this is all information that you can find online as well. By doing your own research, you can go to the ETF website itself and have a look at all of the information that's available. The next ETF that I'm looking at buying is IOO, which is the iShares Global 100 ETF. So the iShares Global 100 ETF has holdings that comprise of Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Johnson & Johnson, JP Morgan, Procter & Gamble, Nestle, and so on. In terms of sector breakdown, we can see again that information technology is the predominant makeup of the ETF, followed by consumer discretionary and healthcare. As you can see, there's a bit of a trend in terms of the ETFs that I like to select. I like to make sure that information technology is something that is at the forefront or makes up majority of the ETF. as technology is something that I personally see a lot of growth with. I mean, I am a YouTuber. I definitely love technology. I love seeing new technology emerge, and I think this is definitely the future, and technology is just something that I see a lot of potential with. In terms of the management fee, we have this at 0.4%, and here we can see the total return percentage since inception has been about 6%. Now the next ETF that I'm looking at is VAS, which is the Vanguard Australian Shares Index ETF. This ETF has 304 number of holdings, and the sector allocation is predominantly financials and materials. So as we can see here, the top holders include BHP, Commonwealth Bank of Australia, CSL, NAB, ANZ, Westpac, Macquarie Group, Wesfarmers, Telstra, Woolworths, Rio Tinto, and the list could essentially go on. Now, the reason that I've decided to invest in this ETF is because I see that there is a predominant focus on financials and materials, and I think financials, given that they are the big four banks of Australia, I just think personally, based off of my research and my values, I used to work at Westpac as well, and I know exactly, what goes on with these banks. So I personally have decided to just invest in that ETF. The next ETF that I've decided to purchase for this year is Asia, which is the BetaShares Asia Technology Tigers ETF. Now this comprises of the 50 largest Asian technology companies, excluding Japan. So the top holdings for this ETF include Samsung, Taiwan Semiconductor, Tencent, Alibaba, Infosys. In terms of sector allocation, we can see that internet and direct marketing retail makes up about 23.4%, and semiconductors, which is about 22.4%. Country allocation has been broken down as well. In terms of the total fund returns after the fees since inception, we've seen about 11.67%. The management fees for this ETF is 0.67%. Again, I personally see growth within these ETFs, and these are all something that I have personally done my research on, and I highly suggest you do the same as well. These ETFs need to resonate with your values and your personal financial situation, so please do your research and speak to the right people. Now, a few other ETFs that I've been keeping my eye on, and is something that I want to do more research on because I'm not entirely sure, but they have really sparked my interest, include IDRV, which is the iShares Self-Driving EV and Tech ETF. Also CRYP, which is the BetaShares Crypto Innovators ETF. And also Vanguard S&P 500 ETF, which is VOO. So those are all of the ETFs that I'm looking to buy this year, if I haven't already. But again, I just want to say thank you to Sharesies for sponsoring today's video. I hope you guys found this helpful. All of the information will be linked down in the description box below, so be sure to check that out. As always, if you want to follow my financial journey, please do over on my Instagram page, and my TikTok account will be linked up on the screen and also in the description box below. And that's it guys, I'll catch you in my next video. Thanks guys.